Let's move on from chart 4.1, which we have already discussed, that covers business orders for equipment, and take a look at another component of business capital expenditures. Let's take a look at inventory accumulation. Now, inventories are stocks of goods on the shelf. Manufacturers use them, wholesalers use them, retail establishments use them. It's obvious that some retail establishments couldn't function without inventories. Can you imagine a department store without goods on the shelf, without clothes on the rack? They've got to be huge holders of inventories in order to do business. Also, inventories, and however, inventories present a cost to the producer. Capital is tied up in inventories. If the firm didn't keep large amounts of inventory, it could take those funds that it would otherwise tie up in inventory and put them out at interest and earn a yield on them. Or conversely, perhaps the business has borrowed heavily in order to accumulate inventories. For instance, running up to the holidays, just before Christmas, businesses will borrow heavily in order to accumulate stocks of goods, merchandise they plan to sell at Christmas, and then repay the loan following the holiday season. This, of course, is called a self-liquidating loan, and it's customary in business. It's obviously seasonal. And once again, however, those inventories present a cost. There's the interest cost of borrowing the capital. So inventories are an expense for business. But inventories are necessary, as we said, and they're large or small depending on the nature of the business. Now, you can imagine that as business grows, the need for inventories grow. You can also imagine that if business faces a boom, business does not want to be caught short of goods to sell. So going into the boom, the business is going to build up its inventories in order to make sure it has enough goods to sell. Nobody wants to have a customer go on to someone else because they weren't able to fill the order. Also, that could lead, that is, the rapid rise in demand for goods could not only lead to shortages, but it also could lead to rising prices. You can imagine that during the housing boom, the fierce demand for lumber bid lumber prices upward. And so not only did lumber mills want to be sure they had sufficient inventories, making sure when goods came in they could fill them, but you can imagine the lumber mills also might speculate that if they milled the lumber now and put it out on the loading dock, over time, as demand grew, the price of lumber might rise and they might make a gain just on the value of that lumber sitting out there on the dock. So therefore, businesses can speculate on the value of inventories and build the inventories hoping they can sell them at a higher price. All those are reasons for inventories to grow during the boom. And sure enough, you can see that during the recent boom, inventories were growing. Business added 100, 150, $200 billion of inventories on a regular basis, on an annual rate each month as the recent expansion 2002, 2004, 2006 was underway. Now, ask yourself this question. If businesses are putting goods into inventory, what's going to grow faster? Output or sales? Well, clearly, if some of the output is just going onto the shelf, then as the boom progresses, what we're going to have is the production is going to grow faster than the sales. And so the inventory buildup sharpens the boom. It exacerbates the boom. It makes the boom hotter and more inflationary. And it increases speculation instead of reduces it. And so what goes on here is that as the boom goes forward, capacity utilization grows, costs rise, and of course, the expense bills for inventory. So the irony is, even though each business firm keeps inventory in order to smooth out the production process, in order to make sure it has enough goods to sell, what happens is all business firms accumulate inventory. Certainly, it makes the cycle that much sharper and brings the cycle to a head. And obviously, what happened when you turn back to chart 4.2, you can see that in 2008, you can see all of a sudden inventories begin to head south. And as we get into negative territory, that means instead of building inventories, inventories are being liquidated. Inventories are being sold off. And this means that as the boom breaks, as the expansion turns into recession, as sales contract, business now finds it has too many goods on the shelf. Business may also find that sales are falling so fast that at first they have involuntary inventory accumulation. That up here at the last spike of inventories in chart 4.2, it could have been that business didn't even want to accumulate those inventories, but the goods that aren't sold end up on the shelf. Then it's panic city. Everyone begins to sell off. No one wants to get caught with excess goods. That's the big expense. No one wants to run the risk of having the goods put into inventory at a high price and then being forced to sell them at a low price. And so you get these fantastic negative numbers, this big rapid sell-off. Well, ask yourself this question. If businesses are selling out of their inventory, if they're selling goods off the shelf, do they need more production? No. And so the outcome of this is production falls more rapidly than sales. And this makes the recession worse. It exacerbates the effects of the downturn. And so as a consequence, even though business firms hope that the inventory smooth out things for themselves, in the aggregate, it makes matters much, much worse.